The morning fog clung to the hills surrounding Fort Benning like a gray shroud, masking the sounds of distant rifle fire that echoed across the sprawling training complex. Staff Sergeant Maya Chen knelt beside her battered duffel bag in the parking lot outside the Army Sniper School headquarters, her discharge papers crumpled in one trembling hand. The official rejection letter bore the cold, bureaucratic language that had shattered her dreams just minutes earlier. Candidate demonstrates insufficient aptitude for precision marksmanship training. Recommend reassignment to conventional infantry role. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The words stung worse than any physical wound she had endured during her 8 years of military service. Maya had been one of only 3 women selected from thousands of applicants for the prestigious program, and now she was the first to be sent home in failure. Around her, the successful candidates were loading their gear into waiting transport vehicles, their faces bright with the confidence of those who had proven themselves worthy of the Army's most elite training program. Maya Chen had grown up in the shadow of military greatness, though she would never have described it that way herself. Her childhood home in rural Montana sat on 40 acres of rolling prairie that her father, a retired Army sergeant, had purchased with his disability pension after losing his left leg to an IED in Fallujah. The property was modest by local standards, but it represented everything that David Chen valued: independence, self-reliance, and the freedom to live according to his own principles. The Chen family had arrived in Montana as refugees from the chaos of post-war Vietnam, carrying nothing but determination and the fierce work ethic that had sustained them through generations of hardship. Maya's grandmother, Lin Chen, had been a factory worker in Saigon, who had saved every penny to secure passage to America for her family. Her stories of survival and sacrifice had shaped Maya's understanding of what it meant to overcome impossible odds through sheer force of will. David Chen had enlisted in the Army at 18, driven by a desire to prove his loyalty to the country that had given his family sanctuary. His military career had been distinguished but brief, cut short by the roadside bomb that had claimed his leg and ended his dreams of becoming a career soldier. The transition to civilian life had been difficult, marked by periods of depression and anger that had tested the limits of his family's patience and love. The turning point had come when David discovered that his daughter possessed an unusual gift for marksmanship. Maya had been 12 years old when her father first handed her a Gobin .22 caliber rifle, expecting nothing more than a pleasant afternoon of target practice behind their house. What he discovered instead was a natural ability that defied explanation and demanded development. Maya's first shots had been awkward and uncertain, the rifle heavy in her small hands as she struggled to understand the basic mechanics of sight alignment and trigger control. But within an hour, she was consistently hitting targets at distances that challenged experienced shooters, her movements becoming more fluid and confident with each round fired. David had watched in amazement as his daughter seemed to develop an intuitive understanding of ballistics and wind compensation that typically took years to master. The discovery of Maya's talent had given David a new sense of purpose, transforming his bitter disappointment about his own truncated military career into passionate dedication to his daughter's development. He had converted an old barn on their property into a comprehensive training facility, complete with shooting ranges that extended out to 800 meters and equipment that he had acquired through careful networking with other veterans and shooting enthusiasts. Maya's training had been rigorous and methodical, reflecting her father's military background and his understanding of the discipline required to excel in precision shooting. Each session began with physical conditioning designed to build the strength and endurance necessary for long-range marksmanship. David had learned through bitter experience that the most sophisticated equipment in the world was useless in the hands of someone who lacked the physical capability to use it effectively. The technical aspects of Maya's education had been equally comprehensive, covering everything from basic ballistics to advanced meteorology. David had taught her to read wind patterns by observing the movement of grass and leaves, to calculate distance by studying the clarity and size of targets, and to understand the effects of temperature and humidity on bullet trajectory. The lessons were practical and hands-on, emphasizing field skills that would prove valuable in real-world applications rather than purely academic knowledge. Maya's natural ability had been remarkable, but David had insisted that talent without discipline was worthless. Her training schedule had been demanding, requiring her to practice in all weather conditions and at all times of day and night. She had learned to shoot accurately while exhausted, cold, wet, and under the pressure of artificial time constraints designed to simulate combat stress. The training had been harder than anything her classmates at the local high school could have imagined, but Maya had embraced it with the enthusiasm of someone who had found her true calling. The rifles Maya had trained with were simple but effective, chosen for their reliability rather than their technological sophistication. David had believed that fundamental marksmanship skills were more important than electronic assistance, and he had insisted that Maya master basic techniques before introducing any advanced equipment. Her primary training weapon had been a bolt-action Remington 700 .308 Winchester, a proven design that had served military and law enforcement snipers for decades. Maya's high school years had been defined by the tension between her extraordinary shooting ability and her desire for a normal teenage experience. She had participated in competitive shooting sports, winning state championships, and setting records that attracted attention from college recruiting scouts and military representatives. But she had also struggled with the social isolation that came from being known primarily for an unusual skill that few of her peers understood or appreciated. The decision to pursue a military career had been made gradually, influenced by her father's stories of service and sacrifice as well as her own growing understanding of the opportunities that the Army could provide. Maya had been attracted by the possibility of using her marksmanship skills in service to her country, following in her father's footsteps while also carving out her own path in a traditionally male-dominated field. Maya's enlistment had coincided with the Army's efforts to integrate women into combat roles, making her part of a small but growing group of female soldiers who were challenging traditional assumptions about gender and military service. Her basic training had been demanding but manageable, her physical conditioning from years of shooting practice serving her well in the rigorous environment of Fort Benning. She had graduated near the top of her class, earning recognition for both her marksmanship ability and her leadership potential. Her first assignment had been with the 82nd Airborne Division, where she had served as a designated marksman with an infantry company deployed to Afghanistan. The deployment had been Maya's introduction to combat, testing her skills and resolve in ways that no amount of training could have fully prepared her for. She had performed exceptionally well, earning the respect of her fellow soldiers and the attention of senior officers who recognized her potential for specialized training. Maya's combat experience had been intense but brief, lasting only 8 months before an injury forced her evacuation to Germany for medical treatment. She had been wounded during a firefight in Kandahar province, taking shrapnel from a mortar round that had left her with permanent scarring on her left shoulder and temporary hearing loss in her right ear. The physical wounds had healed relatively quickly, but the psychological impact of combat had been more lasting and complex. The recovery period had given Maya time to reflect on her military career and consider her future options. Her company commander had recommended her for sniper training, citing her exceptional marksmanship scores and her demonstrated ability to perform under pressure. The recommendation had been enthusiastically endorsed by her battalion commander, who had observed Maya's performance during multiple combat operations and believed that she possessed the skills and temperament necessary for success in specialized training. The application process for Army Sniper School had been lengthy and competitive, requiring extensive documentation of marksmanship ability, physical fitness, and psychological stability. Maya had submitted shooting scores that placed her in the top percentile of all applicants, along with fitness test results that exceeded the standards required for most special operations units. Her psychological evaluation had been positive, noting her emotional stability and her ability to function effectively under extreme stress. The selection notification had arrived on a cold February morning, delivered by courier to Maya's duty station at Fort Bragg. The letter had been brief and formal, informing her that she had been accepted for the next available class at the Army Sniper School and directing her to report for training in 6 weeks. Maya had read the letter 3 times before the reality of her selection had fully registered, her hands shaking with excitement and anticipation. The 6 weeks between selection and the start of training had passed quickly, filled with intensive preparation designed to ensure that Maya was ready for the challenges ahead. She had consulted with other snipers who had completed the program, gathering advice about equipment, training methods, and the mental preparation required for success. The conversations had been encouraging but sobering, emphasizing the difficulty of the course and the high standards that would be expected of all candidates. Maya's preparation had included extensive physical conditioning, designed to build the endurance and strength necessary for the demanding field exercises that would be part of the training program. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. She'd also spent countless hours on the shooting range, refining her marksmanship techniques and experimenting with different equipment configurations. The preparation had been thorough and methodical, reflecting the lessons her father had taught her about the importance of being ready for any challenge. The equipment Maya had assembled for sniper training represented a careful balance between capability and practicality, chosen based on her research and the advice of experienced professionals. Her rifle was a Remington 700 police model chambered in Sitness, 308 Winchester, equipped with a loopholed Mark IV scope and a Harris bipod. The combination was proven and reliable, used by law enforcement and military snipers around the world. Maya had spent hundreds of hours training with the weapon, developing an intimate familiarity with its characteristics and capabilities. Maya's personal gear reflected her practical approach to equipment selection, emphasizing functionality over appearance or prestige. Her field pack contained the basic items necessary for extended operations, including food, water, medical supplies, and the tools required for weapon maintenance. She had avoided the temptation to acquire expensive accessories or specialized equipment that might prove unnecessary or unreliable under field conditions. The night before departing for Fort Benning, Maya had sat with her father on the porch of their Montana home, watching the sun set over the prairie while discussing her hopes and concerns about the training ahead. David had been proud, but apprehensive, understanding better than most the challenges that awaited his daughter at one of the Army's most demanding schools. His advice had been simple, but profound. Trust your training, stay focused on fundamentals, and never let anyone convince you that you don't belong there. Maya's journey to Fort Benning had been both literal and metaphorical, representing not just a change of location, but a transition to a new phase of her military career. The flight from Montana to Georgia had given her time to reflect on the path that had brought her to this moment, from a 12-year-old girl firing her first shots in a converted barn to a seasoned combat veteran preparing for the Army's most elite training program. The arrival at Fort Benning had been overwhelming, the massive military installation bustling with activity as thousands of soldiers participated in various training programs. Maya had checked into her temporary quarters and spent the evening reviewing her equipment and mentally preparing for the challenges ahead. Sleep had been elusive, her mind racing with anticipation and nervous energy that made rest impossible. The first day of sniper training had begun before dawn, with candidates gathering in a dimly lit classroom for initial briefings and administrative processing. Maya had been one of 42 soldiers selected for the course, drawn from units across the Army, based on their demonstrated marksmanship ability and potential for success in specialized roles. The group included some of the most skilled shooters in the military, men and women who had earned their places through exceptional performance and dedication to their craft. The initial evaluation process had been comprehensive and intimidating, designed to establish baseline capabilities and identify candidates who might struggle with the demands of the program. Maya had approached each test with confidence, her years of training and combat experience providing a solid foundation for the challenges presented. Her marksmanship scores had been excellent, placing her near the top of the class in terms of raw shooting ability. The academic portion of the evaluation had covered advanced ballistics, meteorology, and tactical planning, subjects that Maya had studied extensively during her preparation for the course. Her performance had been solid but not exceptional, reflecting her practical approach to learning and her preference for hands-on application over theoretical knowledge. The instructors had noted her steady competence and her apparent readiness for the more demanding phases of training. Maya's physical fitness evaluation had been perhaps her strongest performance, years of conditioning and combat experience evident in her endurance and strength. She had completed the required tests with ease, demonstrating the physical capability necessary for the demanding field exercises that would follow. The instructors had been impressed by her conditioning and her apparent comfort with the physical demands of military service. The psychological evaluation had been more subtle, but equally important, designed to assess each candidate's mental stability and ability to function under extreme stress. Maya had approached the process with the calm confidence that had served her well in combat, answering questions honestly while maintaining the professional demeanor expected of a potential sniper. The evaluators had noted her emotional stability and her apparent resilience in the face of adversity. The first indication that Maya might face challenges beyond the normal rigors of sniper training had come during the initial team-building exercises. when she had overheard several male candidates discussing their doubts about women's ability to succeed in the program. The comments had been crude and dismissive, reflecting attitudes that Maya had encountered throughout her military career, but had hoped to leave behind in such an elite environment. Maya's response to the discrimination had been characteristically direct and professional, choosing to let her performance speak for itself rather than engaging in arguments or confrontations. She had maintained her focus on training objectives while remaining alert to the social dynamics that could affect her success in the program. The approach had been tested repeatedly as the course progressed and the pressure increased. The first major setback had occurred during the third week of training, when Maya had experienced equipment failures during a critical shooting exercise. Her rifle scope had malfunctioned during a long-range precision test, forcing her to complete the exercise using backup iron sights that significantly reduced her accuracy potential. The malfunction had been blamed on a manufacturing defect, but the impact on her performance had been significant and lasting. Maya's scores on subsequent exercises had suffered as she struggled to regain confidence in her equipment and her ability to perform under pressure. The instructors had noted her declining performance with concern, but had attributed it to the normal stress of training rather than any fundamental inability to succeed in the program. Maya had worked frantically to correct her problems, spending extra hours on the range and seeking advice from instructors and fellow candidates. The final evaluation that had led to Maya's dismissal had been a comprehensive field exercise designed to test all aspects of sniper training under realistic conditions. Candidates were required to demonstrate their ability to locate and engage targets at extended range while operating independently in challenging terrain. Maya had approached the exercise with determination, knowing that her performance would determine her future in the program. The exercise had begun promisingly, with Maya successfully engaging several targets at moderate range while demonstrating solid fieldcraft and tactical movement. But as the distances increased and the conditions became more challenging, her performance had deteriorated steadily. Her shots had been consistently low and to the left, a pattern that suggested fundamental problems with her shooting technique or equipment. 0. Maya's final score had placed her at the bottom of the class, a devastating result that had shocked both her instructors and her fellow candidates. The failure had been particularly difficult to understand given her strong performance during the initial phases of training and her documented marksmanship ability from previous assignments. The instructors had been sympathetic but firm in their assessment that she lacked the consistency necessary for success as a military sniper. The dismissal meeting had been brief and professional, conducted by the school's senior instructor in his Spartan office overlooking the main training facility. Major Robert Hayes had been polite but direct in his assessment, explaining that Maya's performance had fallen below the minimum standards required for continuation in the program. He had emphasized that the decision was based purely on objective performance criteria and had nothing to do with her gender or personal character. Maya's request for additional training time or remedial instruction had been politely but firmly denied, the major explaining that the school's schedule and standards did not permit such accommodations. The program was designed to identify candidates who possessed the natural ability and temperament necessary for success as snipers, and Maya's performance had indicated that she did not meet those criteria. The decision was final and not subject to appeal. The ride back to her temporary quarters had been the longest of Maya's life, her mind reeling with disbelief and disappointment. She had replayed every shot of the final exercise, trying to understand where she had gone wrong and how her performance had deteriorated so dramatically. The failure was incomprehensible, contradicting everything she had believed about her abilities and her potential for success in the military. Maya's initial reaction had been anger, both at herself and at the system that she felt had failed to recognize her true potential. She had been tempted to blame her dismissal on discrimination or bias, but her honest assessment of her performance made such explanations difficult to sustain. The facts were clear and undeniable. She had failed to meet the standards required for success in the program. The phone call to her father had been the most difficult conversation of Maya's life, requiring her to admit failure in the pursuit of dreams that had shaped her identity for years. David Chen had been supportive and understanding, reminding his daughter that setbacks were temporary and that true character was revealed in how one responded to adversity. His words had been comforting, but had done little to ease the profound disappointment that threatened to overwhelm her. Maya's fellow candidates had been sympathetic, but distant in their reactions to her dismissal, offering polite condolences while clearly relieved that they had avoided a similar fate. The social dynamics of the program made genuine friendship difficult, as each candidate understood that they were competing not just against external standards, but against each other for limited positions in the sniper community. The administrative processing required for Maya's departure from the program had been efficient but impersonal, reducing her dreams and aspirations to a series of forms and signatures. Her equipment had been inventoried and returned to the supply system. Her temporary security clearances had been revoked, and her orders had been modified to reflect her new assignment with a conventional infantry unit. The bureaucratic machinery had been swift and thorough in erasing any trace of her brief tenure as a sniper candidate. Maya's final night at Fort Benning had been spent in restless contemplation, her mind cycling through memories of training and combat while struggling to come to terms with her failure. She had considered requesting transfer to a different military occupation, perhaps one that would allow her to start fresh without the burden of unfulfilled expectations. But something deep inside her rebelled against the idea of giving up on the dreams that had defined her for so long. The dawn that had brought Maya's departure from Fort Benning had also marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life, though she could not have known it at the time. As she loaded her gear into the waiting transport vehicle, Maya had made a silent promise to herself that this failure would not define her future. The promise had been born of desperation rather than confidence, but it would prove to be the foundation upon which she would build her eventual redemption. The assignment to Fort Carson, Colorado came with the bitter taste of demotion disguised as routine personnel transfer. Maya found herself integrated into the 4th Infantry Division as a standard rifleman, her specialized marksmanship training reduced to a footnote in her personnel file that most of her new colleagues would never see. The Rocky Mountains loomed over the base like silent judges, their snow-capped peaks, a constant reminder of the heights she had failed to reach and the dreams that now seemed impossibly distant. Captain Lisa Rodriguez had been Maya's new company commander, a no-nonsense officer who had earned her position through competence rather than politics. During their initial interview, Rodriguez had studied Maya's file with the careful attention of someone who understood that official records often told only part of a soldier's story. The sniper school dismissal was noted but not dwelled upon, treated as one data point among many, rather than a defining failure that would determine Maya's future opportunities. The integration into conventional infantry operations had been more difficult than Maya had anticipated, requiring her to suppress instincts and skills that had been finely honed through years of specialized training. Her natural tendency toward patient observation and careful movement conflicted with the aggressive, fast-paced tactics employed by standard infantry units. The adjustment had been painful, forcing Maya to question not only her abilities but also her understanding of her place within the military hierarchy. Maya's new squad leader, Staff Sergeant Marcus Williams, had been initially skeptical of her capabilities, having heard rumors about her failure at sniper school through the informal communication networks that connected all military installations. Williams had been a veteran of multiple deployments, his experience shaped by the practical realities of urban combat, rather than the precision shooting that had defined Maya's background. His leadership style was direct and uncompromising, designed to forge unit cohesion through shared hardship and mutual dependence. The first few months at Fort Carson had passed in a blur of routine training exercises and administrative duties that seemed designed to suppress rather than develop Maya's unique capabilities. She had been assigned to carry standard infantry weapons and equipment, her specialized marksmanship skills relegated to occasional demonstrations that drew curious attention but no meaningful recognition. The work had been competent, but uninspiring, lacking the intellectual challenge and technical precision that had made her previous assignments rewarding. Maya's fellow soldiers had treated her with the cautious respect accorded to someone whose reputation preceded them, but genuine friendship had been difficult to establish. The failure at sniper school had created a barrier that was both psychological and social, marking her as someone who had reached for excellence and fallen short. The stigma had been subtle but persistent, affecting everything from duty assignments to social interactions in ways that were difficult to quantify but impossible to ignore. The turning point had come during a routine training exercise at the Army's Mountain Warfare School, where Maya's company had been participating in high-altitude operations designed to prepare them for potential deployments to Afghanistan. The exercise had been conducted at elevations exceeding 10,000 feet, creating environmental conditions that challenged both equipment and human performance in ways that few soldiers ever experienced. The scenario had involved a simulated hostage rescue operation in rugged terrain, that required careful coordination between multiple units operating at extended distances from each other. Maya's squad had been assigned to provide overwatch for the main assault force, positioned on a ridgeline that offered excellent observation of the target area but limited opportunities for direct engagement. The assignment had seemed routine until intelligence reports indicated the presence of enemy snipers in the area. The enemy marksmen had been portrayed by instructors from the Special Forces Sniper Course, experienced professionals who understood how to create realistic and challenging scenarios for training purposes. Their positions had been carefully chosen to test the abilities of the conventional infantry soldiers who were participating in the exercise, creating situations that required quick thinking and precise shooting under pressure. Maya's first indication that the exercise had become more than routine training had come when bullets began impacting near her position, the distinctive crack of supersonic projectiles passing overhead, serving as an unmistakable warning that she was being targeted by a skilled marksman. Her squad leader had immediately ordered the team to take cover and attempt to locate the source of the fire, but the sniper's position had been expertly concealed among the rocky outcroppings that dominated the terrain. The tactical situation had deteriorated rapidly as the enemy marksmen had continued to engage Maya's squad with accurate fire that pinned them down and prevented them from supporting the main assault force. Williams had attempted to coordinate a response using standard infantry tactics, but the distance and terrain had made conventional suppressive fire ineffective. The exercise had reached an impasse that threatened to result in failure for the entire unit. Maya's decision to act had been instinctive rather than calculated, born of frustration with her passive role and recognition that her specialized skills might be relevant to the tactical problem at hand. She had requested permission to attempt to locate and engage the enemy sniper using her personal rifle, a request that Williams had initially rejected as being outside her assigned role and capabilities. The debate had continued for several critical minutes, while the tactical situation remained deadlocked. The weapon Maya had brought to the exercise had been her personal Remington 700, the same rifle she had used during her father's training and her early military career. The decision to bring the weapon had been partly practical and partly sentimental, representing a connection to her roots and a reminder of skills that seemed increasingly irrelevant to her current assignment. The rifle had been equipped with a modest scope and bipod, configured for the type of precision shooting that had once been her specialty. Williams' eventual agreement to let Maya attempt to engage the enemy sniper had been driven more by desperation than confidence, as conventional tactics had proven ineffective and time was running short. The authorization had come with strict limitations, and the understanding that failure would result in immediate reassignment to rear area duties for the remainder of the exercise. Maya had accepted the conditions without hesitation, grateful for any opportunity to demonstrate that her skills retained value despite her earlier failure. Maya's approach to the tactical problem had been methodical and patient, reflecting the training her father had provided and the lessons she had learned through years of practical application. She had begun by conducting careful observation of the terrain, looking for signs of the enemy sniper's position and movement patterns. The process had been time-consuming but necessary, as accurate target identification was essential for success. The environmental conditions had been challenging, with altitude effects that reduced air density and modified ballistic calculations in ways that required careful consideration. Maya had been forced to adapt her techniques to account for the thinner atmosphere, adjusting her holdover and windage estimates based on principles she had learned years earlier, but rarely had occasion to apply. The calculations had been complex but manageable, drawing on theoretical knowledge that had been reinforced through practical experience. Maya's eventual identification of the enemy sniper's position had come through careful observation of muzzle flash and sonic signature patterns that revealed the shooter's general location among the rocky terrain. The target had been partially concealed behind natural cover at an estimated distance of 600 meters, a challenging shot under ideal conditions and a formidable test given the environmental factors and time pressure involved. The preparation for her shot had been deliberate and thorough, reflecting the methodical approach that had characterized Maya's training throughout her career. She had established a stable shooting position using natural terrain features, adjusted her scope settings for the estimated range and environmental conditions, and conducted final equipment checks to ensure that her rifle was functioning properly. The process had taken several minutes, during which Williams had grown increasingly impatient with the delay. Maya's breathing had settled into the controlled rhythm that preceded every important shot of her career, her body finding the natural point of aim that would allow her to execute the engagement with maximum precision. The crosshairs had settled on the estimated location of the enemy sniper, though the target remained largely invisible behind cover. The shot would be based on calculated prediction rather than direct observation, requiring confidence in her analysis and commitment to her decision. The crack of Maya's rifle had echoed across the mountain valley like thunder, the sound reverberating off the rocky walls and alerting everyone in the area that a precision engagement had been attempted. Through her scope, Maya had watched for signs of impact or reaction that would indicate whether her shot had been successful. The silence that followed had been agonizing, broken only by the distant sounds of ongoing tactical movements by other elements of the exercise. The confirmation of success had come through radio communications from the exercise controllers, who reported that the enemy sniper had been neutralized by accurate fire from Maya's position. The shot had been placed within inches of the target's center mass, at a distance that later measurement confirmed as 627 meters, a remarkable achievement given the challenging conditions and limited preparation time available. The success had been observed by multiple exercise officials and recorded for subsequent analysis. Williams' reaction to Maya's successful engagement had been a mixture of relief and surprise, his previous skepticism replaced by grudging recognition of capabilities that he had not expected to find in a soldier who had failed sniper school. The tactical situation had been immediately resolved, allowing the exercise to proceed according to plan and preventing what could have been a significant training failure for the entire unit. The aftermath of the successful shot had been complex and multifaceted, generating interest from exercise observers who had witnessed an exceptional display of marksmanship under challenging conditions. Maya's performance had been documented and reported through command channels, creating ripple effects that would influence her career in ways she could not have anticipated. The immediate impact had been a newfound respect from her squad members and increased confidence in her own abilities. The debriefing sessions that followed the exercise had focused heavily on Maya's successful engagement, with instructors and observers seeking to understand how a soldier who had failed sniper school had been able to achieve such remarkable results under pressure. The analysis had revealed that Maya's fundamental skills remained exceptional, despite whatever problems had led to her earlier dismissal from specialized training. The contradiction had raised questions about the evaluation methods used by the sniper school and the criteria applied to determine candidate suitability. Captain Rodriguez had been among the officers who took particular interest in Maya's performance, recognizing that exceptional soldiers were too valuable to waste on routine assignments that failed to utilize their capabilities. Her subsequent investigation into Maya's background and training history had revealed a pattern of excellence that made her sniper school failure even more puzzling and concerning. The discrepancy had suggested that systemic problems might exist within the selection and evaluation process. Maya's own analysis of her successful shot had been equally complex, forcing her to reconcile her current capabilities with her earlier failure, and to consider what factors might have contributed to such dramatically different outcomes. The environmental conditions at the mountain warfare school had been challenging but not unprecedented, and her equipment had functioned flawlessly throughout the engagement. The success had restored some measure of confidence but had also raised troubling questions about her dismissal from sniper training. The rifle that had served Maya so well during the exercise had been the same weapon she had trained with under her father's guidance, a familiar tool that she understood intimately and trusted completely. The contrast with the equipment problems she had experienced during sniper school had been stark, suggesting that external factors rather than fundamental ability might have been responsible for her earlier failure. The realization had been both encouraging and frustrating, offering hope for redemption while highlighting the injustice of her dismissal. The weeks following the mountain warfare school exercise had been marked by increased attention from senior officers who had heard reports of Maya's exceptional performance and were curious about her background and potential. The interest had been professionally gratifying but also emotionally complicated, as it highlighted how far her career had fallen from its original trajectory. Maya had found herself caught between appreciation for newfound recognition and resentment about opportunities that had been lost. Staff Sergeant Williams had become an unexpected advocate for Maya's advancement, his initial skepticism replaced by recognition that he had been assigned a soldier whose capabilities far exceeded those typical of conventional infantry personnel. His recommendations for Maya's utilization in specialized roles had been forwarded through command channels, though the response had been cautious given her documented failure at sniper school. The military's institutional memory was long and unforgiving when it came to training failures. The informal recognition of Maya's abilities had begun to translate into more challenging and rewarding assignments within her unit, though she remained officially classified as a standard rifleman. Her squad leader had begun consulting her on tactical decisions that involved long-range observation or precision shooting, treating her as a subject matter expert despite her lack of formal credentials. The responsibilities had been satisfying but also highlighted the limitations of her current position. Maya's personal weapons training had intensified following her success at the Mountain Warfare School, driven by renewed confidence in her abilities and determination to be ready for future opportunities. She had spent countless hours on the range, refining her techniques and experimenting with different equipment configurations, treating each training session as preparation for challenges that might lie ahead. The dedication had been noted by range personnel and other soldiers who observed her commitment to excellence. The social dynamics within Maya's unit had shifted noticeably following her demonstration of exceptional marksmanship, with fellow soldiers beginning to view her as someone whose capabilities had been underestimated rather than someone who had failed to meet standards. The change had been gradual but significant, affecting everything from daily interactions to mission planning and execution. Maya had found herself increasingly consulted on tactical matters and included in discussions that had previously been conducted without her input. The contrast between Maya's current recognition and her earlier dismissal from sniper school had become a source of ongoing frustration, highlighting the arbitrary nature of evaluation systems that could produce such contradictory results. Her success at the Mountain Warfare School had been witnessed by multiple observers and documented through official channels, creating an objective record of capabilities that stood in stark contrast to her sniper school performance. The discrepancy had raised uncomfortable questions about the validity of the evaluation process. Maya's relationship with her equipment had evolved significantly following her successful engagement at altitude, renewing her confidence in weapons and techniques that had served her well throughout her career. The reliability of her personal rifle had been demonstrated under challenging conditions, reinforcing her belief that familiar equipment often performed better than more sophisticated alternatives. The lesson had broader implications for her approach to professional development and career planning. The possibility of returning to specialized training had begun to seem more realistic following Maya's demonstrated success in tactical situations that required precision shooting. Captain Rodriguez had initiated informal inquiries about the feasibility of resubmitting Maya for advanced marksmanship training, though the response from higher headquarters had been non-committal. The military's bureaucratic machinery was slow to acknowledge past mistakes or reconsider previous decisions. Maya's father had been among the first to hear about her success at the Mountain Warfare School, their regular phone conversations providing an outlet for her to process the complex emotions generated by renewed recognition of her abilities. David Chen had been unsurprised by his daughter's performance, having maintained confidence in her capabilities despite the setback at sniper school. His perspective had been valuable in helping Maya understand that individual failures did not define overall potential. The training opportunities available to Maya within her conventional infantry assignment had been limited but not entirely without value, allowing her to develop tactical skills and leadership experience that complemented her marksmanship abilities. Her growing reputation within the unit had led to increased responsibilities and recognition, though she remained frustrated by the underutilization of her specialized capabilities. The situation had been professionally stagnant despite recent successes. Maya's equipment requirements had evolved as her role within the unit became more specialized, leading to requests for upgraded optics and precision ammunition that could support more demanding shooting assignments. The requisitions had been approved based on her demonstrated performance, though they remained modest compared to the resources available to formally trained snipers. The improvements had been incremental but meaningful, enhancing her capabilities without fundamentally changing her official status. The psychological impact of Maya's successful shot at the Mountain Warfare School had been profound, restoring confidence that had been shattered by her failure at sniper school and providing evidence that her capabilities remained intact despite official assessments to the contrary. The success had been particularly meaningful because it had occurred under pressure and observation, eliminating any possibility that it could be dismissed as luck or favorable conditions. The performance had been objectively excellent by any standard. Maya's analysis of the factors that had contributed to her success had identified several elements that had been absent during her sniper school experience, including familiar equipment, environmental conditions that matched her training background, and tactical scenarios that allowed her to apply skills developed through years of practical experience. The comparison had been instructive but also frustrating, highlighting how contextual factors could dramatically influence performance outcomes. The recognition that Maya had received following her exceptional performance had been gratifying but also bittersweet, representing validation of capabilities that should have been acknowledged much earlier in her career. The attention had created new opportunities while also highlighting time and potential that had been wasted due to inadequate evaluation procedures. Maya had found herself torn between appreciation for current recognition and resentment about past injustices. The possibility that Maya's dismissal from sniper school had been the result of systematic bias or inadequate evaluation procedures had become increasingly difficult to ignore, given the stark contrast between her documented failure and her recent exceptional performance. The implications extended beyond her individual case to suggest broader problems with military training and evaluation systems that could affect other qualified candidates. The realization had been both personal and professional in its significance. Maya's growing reputation within the 4th Infantry Division had begun to attract attention from outside organizations, including special operations units that were constantly seeking qualified personnel for specialized roles. The interest had been preliminary and informal, but it represented recognition that her capabilities might be better utilized in different organizational contexts. The possibility of transfer to more appropriate assignments had become a source of both hope and anxiety. The contrast between Maya's current success and her earlier failure had become a subject of informal discussion among officers and enlisted personnel who were aware of both situations, generating debate about the reliability of evaluation systems and the criteria used to determine candidate suitability for specialized training. The conversations had been professionally relevant, but also personally uncomfortable, as they required Maya to relive experiences that remained painful despite subsequent vindication. Maya's commitment to professional development had intensified following her demonstrated success, driven by determination to be ready for opportunities that might arise and to avoid repeating the mistakes that had led to her earlier failure. Her training regimen had become more sophisticated and comprehensive, incorporating lessons learned from both success and failure. The dedication had been noted by supervisors and colleagues who recognized her exceptional commitment to excellence. The institutional memory of Maya's sniper school failure had begun to fade somewhat as her recent successes accumulated, though official records remained unchanged and continued to influence assignment decisions and career opportunities. The persistence of documented failure despite demonstrated success had highlighted the inflexibility of military personnel systems and their resistance to acknowledging past mistakes. Maya had found herself trapped between official assessments and practical reality. The equipment that Maya had access to through her conventional infantry assignment remained limited compared to what was available to specialized personnel, though her growing reputation had led to some improvements in optics and ammunition quality. The constraints had been frustrating but also educational, forcing her to maximize performance using standard military issue rather than specialized equipment. The experience had reinforced lessons about adaptability and resourcefulness that would prove valuable in future assignments. Maya's tactical knowledge had continued to develop through exposure to conventional infantry operations and training exercises that emphasized different skills and perspectives than those found in specialized marksmanship programs. The broadening of her experience base had been professionally valuable, though it had not addressed her desire to return to precision shooting roles that better utilized her natural abilities. The situation had been educational but ultimately limiting in terms of career satisfaction and professional fulfillment. The social environment within Maya's unit had evolved to acknowledge her exceptional capabilities, while also recognizing the institutional constraints that prevented their full utilization. Fellow soldiers had begun to view her as a resource for tactical advice and specialized knowledge, creating an informal role that provided some satisfaction despite official limitations. The recognition had been meaningful, but also highlighted the gap between potential and reality in her current assignment. Maya's analysis of her professional situation had revealed a complex web of factors that influenced military careers, including the impact of single evaluation events, the persistence of official records, and the difficulty of overcoming institutional inertia once negative assessments had been documented. The insights had been valuable, but also discouraging, suggesting that redemption might require extraordinary measures rather than simple demonstration of competence. The challenge ahead would require more than just exceptional performance. The emergency deployment order arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, delivered through encrypted channels that indicated the highest priority and immediate implementation. Maya had been conducting routine maintenance on her personal rifle when Captain Rodriguez burst into the armory with the notification that would change everything. The 4th Infantry Division was being called upon to provide specialized support for a hostage rescue operation in an unnamed location, and Maya's recent demonstrated capabilities had earned her a place on the mission roster, despite her official classification as conventional infantry. The briefing room at Fort Carson had been transformed into a tactical operations center within hours, its walls covered with satellite imagery, topographical maps, and intelligence summaries that painted a picture of extraordinary complexity and danger. The situation involved American contractors, who had been captured by insurgent forces in a remote mountainous region, held in a compound that intelligence analysts described as virtually impregnable, using conventional assault techniques. The rescue would require precision engagement of multiple targets at extended range, capabilities that existed nowhere else within the available forces. Colonel James Mitchell had been assigned as overall mission commander, his extensive special operations background making him the logical choice for an operation that demanded both tactical sophistication and operational flexibility. Mitchell's reputation within the Army was legendary, built through decades of successful missions in the most challenging environments around the world. His presence on the operations signaled the importance that higher headquarters placed on achieving success regardless of the obstacles involved. The intelligence briefing that followed Maya's arrival at the operations center had been comprehensive and sobering, revealing the full scope of the challenges that lay ahead. The hostages were being held in a fortified compound situated on a mountainside at an elevation exceeding 8,000 feet, surrounded by terrain that offered excellent defensive positions and limited approach routes. The insurgents holding them were well-equipped and professionally trained, led by a former military officer who understood how to exploit terrain advantages and coordinate defensive operations. Maya's inclusion in the mission planning process had been unprecedented for someone of her rank and official specialization, but Colonel Mitchell had made it clear that operational requirements took precedence over organizational charts and personnel classifications. The mission demanded capabilities that she had demonstrated, and bureaucratic concerns about her official status would not be allowed to interfere with mission success. The recognition had been professionally validating, but also intimidating, as it placed enormous responsibility on her shoulders. The tactical plan that emerged from hours of detailed analysis had been elegant in its simplicity, but daunting in its execution requirements. A small team would infiltrate the area under cover of darkness, establish overwatch positions on high ground surrounding the compound, and provide precision fire support for an assault force that would approach from the valley floor. The success of the entire operation would depend on the ability of designated marksmen to neutralize specific threats at distances exceeding 800 meters in challenging environmental conditions. Maya's assigned position had been identified through careful terrain analysis as the only location that offered clear lines of sight to critical target areas while providing adequate concealment for the shooter. The position was situated on a rocky outcropping approximately 1,200 meters from the compound, a distance that pushed the effective range of her rifle to its absolute limits. The environmental conditions at that altitude would further complicate an already difficult engagement, with thin air affecting ballistic calculations and unpredictable wind patterns requiring constant adjustment. The weapon Maya would carry on the mission had been the subject of intense discussion among the planning team, with some officers arguing for the use of more advanced equipment that might offer theoretical advantages at extended range. However, Colonel Mitchell had ultimately decided that familiarity and reliability were more important than technological sophistication, especially given Maya's demonstrated proficiency with her personal rifle and the limited time available for training with unfamiliar equipment. The preparation phase for the mission had been compressed into 72 hours of intensive training and rehearsal, during which Maya had worked closely with other team members to refine tactics and coordinate procedures. The timeline had been brutally demanding, requiring mastery of new techniques and equipment while also conducting detailed mission planning and intelligence analysis. Maya had approached the preparation with the focused intensity that had characterized her training throughout her career, understanding that lives would depend on her performance. The ballistic calculations required for successful engagement at 1,200 meters had been complex and unforgiving, accounting for altitude effects, temperature variations, and wind patterns that could change significantly over the course of the operation. Maya had worked closely with the team's meteorologist to develop detailed firing solutions for various scenarios, creating reference cards that would allow rapid adjustment for changing conditions. The mathematical precision required had been exhausting but essential for mission success. The rehearsals conducted at Fort Carson had been as realistic as possible given security constraints and available facilities, though they could not fully replicate the environmental conditions and psychological pressure that would characterize the actual operation. Maya had practiced her designated shots hundreds of times, refining her technique and building confidence in her ability to perform under pressure. The repetition had been valuable, but had also highlighted the unprecedented nature of the challenges she would face. The team that would execute the mission had been assembled from multiple units across the Army, bringing together specialists with complementary skills and extensive operational experience. Maya had found herself working alongside soldiers whose capabilities and backgrounds far exceeded anything she had previously encountered, creating both inspiration and pressure to perform at their level. The professional relationships formed during the brief preparation period would prove crucial during the operation itself. The intelligence updates that continued to arrive throughout the preparation phase had painted an increasingly complex picture of the tactical situation, with reports of additional insurgent forces in the area and improved defensive positions around the compound. The information had required constant revision of the tactical plan and highlighted the dynamic nature of the operational environment. Maya had been forced to prepare for multiple contingencies while maintaining focus on her primary assignment. The departure from Fort Carson had been conducted with the secrecy and precision that characterized special operations, with the team transported to a staging area through a series of carefully coordinated movements that avoided detection by hostile intelligence services. Maya had found herself separated from the familiar environment of her home base, operating in a world where normal rules and procedures were suspended in favor of mission requirements. The flight to the operational area had been conducted in a military transport aircraft configured for special operations, its interior stripped of normal passenger amenities and filled with equipment and personnel preparing for combat. Maya had used the transit time to conduct final equipment checks and mental rehearsal of her assigned tasks, trying to maintain focus while dealing with the anxiety that accompanied her first special operations mission. The insertion into the operational area had been executed during the pre-dawn hours, using helicopters that approached at low altitude to avoid detection by insurgent air defense systems. Maya had been struck by the rugged beauty of the mountainous terrain as it became visible in the growing light, its peaks and valleys creating a landscape that was both magnificent and forbidding. The insertion had been flawlessly executed, placing the team in position to begin their approach to the target area. The movement to Maya's assigned overwatch position had required several hours of careful navigation through difficult terrain that offered limited concealment and multiple opportunities for detection by insurgent patrols. The route had been selected to avoid known enemy positions while providing the quickest access to the firing position, but it had still required exceptional fieldcraft and patience to execute successfully. Maya had drawn upon every lesson her father had taught her about moving undetected through hostile territory. The establishment of the overwatch position had been a methodical process that required careful consideration of concealment, fields of fire, and escape routes while also preparing the complex firing solutions that would be needed for successful engagement at extreme range. Maya had spent over an hour preparing her position, using natural materials to create a hide that would be virtually invisible from the compound below while providing a stable platform for precision shooting. The compound that came into view through Maya's scope had been exactly as described in intelligence briefings, a fortified structure built into the mountainside that offered excellent defensive advantages and limited approach routes for attacking forces. Through her optics, Maya could observe insurgent sentries moving through their patrol patterns, with the discipline and coordination that indicated professional military training. The target area she would need to engage were clearly visible, though the distances involved made precise shot placement extremely challenging. The wait for the assault to begin had been the most difficult part of the operation, requiring Maya to maintain perfect position and readiness while dealing with the psychological pressure of knowing that American lives depended on her performance. The hours had passed slowly, marked only by periodic radio checks and minor adjustments to account for changing environmental conditions. Maya had used the time to conduct detailed observation of the target area and refine her firing solutions. The insurgent forces defending the compound had been more numerous and better organized than intelligence estimates had suggested, creating additional complications for the tactical plan and placing greater pressure on the overwatch teams to provide effective fire support. Maya had observed at least 12 armed individuals moving through defensive positions, each representing a potential threat to the assault force. The revised threat assessment had required real-time modification of engagement priorities and firing sequences. The signal to commence the operation had come through Maya's radio headset as a simple code word that initiated the most complex and demanding tactical sequence of her military career. The assault force had begun their approach from the valley floor, while Maya and other Overwatch personnel prepared to engage designated targets with precision fire designed to suppress defensive resistance and create opportunities for the rescuers to reach the hostages. Maya's first target had been an insurgent machine gunner positioned on the compound's roof, his weapon commanding the primary approach route that the assault force would need to use. The distance to target had been measured at 1,187 meters, requiring precise calculation of ballistic drop, wind deflection, and altitude effects that would influence bullet trajectory. Maya had made final adjustments to her scope settings and settled into the shooting position that would determine the success or failure of her first engagement. The environmental conditions at the moment of engagement had been challenging but manageable, with moderate wind from the northeast and temperature stable at 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Maya had compensated for the thin air at altitude by adjusting her holdover calculations, drawing upon theoretical knowledge that had never been tested under actual combat conditions. The pressure had been enormous, but her breathing had settled into the controlled rhythm that preceded every important shot of her career. The crack of Maya's rifle had echoed across the mountain valley like thunder, announcing to everyone in the area that the rescue operation had begun in earnest. Through her scope, Maya had watched the machine gunner collapse behind his weapon, the precision shot having found its mark at a distance that exceeded the effective range of most military rifles. The successful engagement had been observed by multiple team members and had immediately shifted the tactical balance in favor of the assault force. Maya's second target had been even more challenging, an insurgent commander who was coordinating defensive activities from a partially concealed position near the compound's main entrance. The shot had required engagement through a narrow gap between defensive barriers, with a margin of error measured in inches rather than feet. Maya had adjusted her point of aim based on her observation of the target's movement patterns, timing her shot to coincide with a brief moment when full target exposure was predicted. The second shot had been equally successful, eliminating a key insurgent leader whose loss had created immediate confusion among the remaining defenders. Maya had watched through her scope as the defensive coordination that had characterized the insurgent response began to break down, creating opportunities for the assault force to advance more rapidly toward their objectives. The psychological impact of losing their commander had been evident in the increasingly disorganized resistance that followed. The tactical situation had evolved rapidly as the assault force had pressed their advantage, moving through defensive positions that had been compromised by the loss of key personnel to precision fire. Maya had continued to engage targets as they presented themselves, each shot calculated to maximum effect, while conserving ammunition for critical engagements that might arise. Her performance had been flawless, with every shot finding its intended target at distances that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible. The most critical moment of the operation had arrived when the assault force had encountered unexpected resistance at the building where the hostages were being held, requiring immediate suppression of insurgent forces who had taken defensive positions that commanded the rescue area. Maya had been called upon to engage multiple targets in rapid succession, a sequence that would test every aspect of her marksmanship training and tactical knowledge. The pressure had been intense, but her response had been instinctive and precise. The rapid engagement sequence had required Maya to shift between targets at different ranges and elevations, making complex ballistic calculations while maintaining the accuracy necessary for effective fire support. Her rifle had performed flawlessly despite the demanding conditions, each shot placed with the precision that had made her reputation throughout the army. The sustained, accurate fire had been instrumental in allowing the assault force to reach the hostages and begin the extraction process. The confirmation that the hostages had been successfully recovered had come through Maya's radio headset as a series of code words that indicated mission success, but the operation was far from over. The extraction would require continued Overwatch support as the rescue team withdrew from the compound and moved to designated pickup points where helicopters would collect them for transport to safety. Maya had maintained her position and continued to provide fire support as needed. The withdrawal from the compound had been executed under pressure from remaining insurgent forces who had regrouped and were attempting to interfere with the extraction operation. Maya had engaged multiple targets during the withdrawal phase, her accurate fire preventing insurgent forces from organizing effective pursuit of the rescue team. The sustained performance had been extraordinary, demonstrating capabilities that exceeded anything in her official training record. The helicopter extraction of the rescue team and hostages had been conducted under fire, requiring continued suppression of insurgent forces who were attempting to engage the aircraft with small arms and rocket-propelled grenades. Maya had provided overwatch during the entire extraction sequence, her precise shots preventing several attempted attacks that could have resulted in catastrophic damage to the rescue helicopters. The successful completion of the extraction phase had marked the end of active combat operations. Maya's own extraction from the overwatch position had been the final phase of the operation, conducted after all other team members and hostages had been safely evacuated from the area. The delayed extraction had been necessary to ensure that insurgent forces could not interfere with the primary mission objectives, but it had placed Maya in a vulnerable position as enemy forces converged on her location. The final withdrawal had required exceptional fieldcraft and tactical movement under pressure. The successful completion of the hostage rescue operation had been achieved at a cost that was remarkably light, given the complexity and danger of the mission, with no casualties among the rescue force and all hostages recovered alive and in good condition. The operation had been hailed as a complete success by military leaders who understood the challenges that had been overcome through exceptional planning and execution. Maya's contribution had been recognized as instrumental to the mission's success. The debriefing sessions that followed the operation had focused extensively on Maya's performance, with senior officers seeking to understand how someone who had failed sniper school had been able to achieve such remarkable results under the most demanding conditions imaginable. The analysis had revealed that Maya's shooting had been perfect throughout the operation, with every shot finding its intended target at distances that challenged the limits of her equipment and environmental conditions. The statistical analysis of Maya's performance during the hostage rescue had been extraordinary by any standard, demonstrating accuracy and consistency that exceeded the capabilities of most trained snipers. Her longest successful engagement had been confirmed at 1,187 meters, achieved under environmental conditions that included altitude effects, variable wind, and psychological pressure that would have compromised the performance of less capable shooters. The documentation had been thorough and objective, creating an official record of exceptional capability. Colonel Mitchell's evaluation of Maya's performance had been unequivocal in its praise, describing her shooting as instrumental to mission success and recommending her for immediate reassignment to specialized roles that would better utilize her demonstrated capabilities. The recommendation had been endorsed by multiple senior officers who had observed the operation and understood the significance of what had been achieved. The official recognition had been comprehensive and unprecedented for someone of Maya's rank and background. The contradiction between Maya's documented failure at sniper school and her exceptional performance during actual combat operations had become impossible to ignore, prompting a formal review of the evaluation procedures used by the Army's marksmanship training programs. The investigation had revealed systematic problems with equipment reliability and evaluation consistency that had resulted in the dismissal of qualified candidates and the certification of others who lacked the capabilities necessary for success in operational environments. The official recognition of problems within the sniper school evaluation system had led to immediate changes in testing procedures and equipment standards, designed to prevent future cases of qualified candidates being dismissed due to equipment failures or inadequate evaluation methods. Maya's case had become a catalyst for broader reforms that would affect military training programs for years to come, ensuring that similar injustices would be less likely to occur. Maya's immediate reassignment to the Army's Special Operations Command had been processed with unprecedented speed, reflecting the urgency with which senior leaders sought to properly utilize her demonstrated capabilities. The transfer had been accompanied by promotion and specialized training opportunities that acknowledged her exceptional performance and provided access to resources commensurate with her abilities. The career transformation had been dramatic and gratifying. The specialized training that Maya received following her reassignment had been comprehensive and challenging, designed to develop her existing capabilities, while also providing the additional skills necessary for success in special operations environments. The instruction had been provided by some of the Army's most experienced professionals, who had recognized in Maya a natural talent that had been inadequately developed by conventional training programs. The education had been intense but immensely rewarding. Maya's new assignment with a special operations unit had provided access to equipment and training resources that far exceeded anything available through conventional channels, allowing her to develop capabilities that matched her natural abilities and operational requirements. The contrast with her previous assignments had been stark, highlighting how much potential had been wasted during her years in conventional infantry roles. The opportunity had been transformative, both professionally and personally. The missions that Maya participated in following her reassignment had been consistently successful, with her marksmanship capabilities proving valuable in a wide variety of operational contexts. Her reputation within the special operations community had grown rapidly, built on a foundation of exceptional performance under pressure and demonstrated ability to achieve results that others considered impossible. The recognition had been professionally satisfying and personally validating. Maya's relationship with her father had evolved significantly following her success in special operations, with David Chen's pride in his daughter's achievements evident in every conversation they shared. The vindication of the training methods he had developed and the skills he had imparted had been personally meaningful to a man whose own military career had been cut short by injury. The validation had been mutual and profound. The impact of Maya's story had extended beyond her individual success to influence training programs and evaluation procedures throughout the military, serving as a cautionary tale about the importance of fair and accurate assessment methods. Her experience had been studied by military educators and used to develop improved approaches to identifying and developing exceptional talent. The broader influence had been both educational and inspirational. The speaking engagements that Maya had been invited to participate in, following her rise to prominence, had provided opportunities to share her experiences with other military personnel and inspire those who faced similar challenges in their careers. Her message had consistently emphasized the importance of perseverance in the face of adversity and the value of maintaining confidence in one's abilities despite official assessments to the contrary. The impact had been far-reaching and meaningful. Maya's eventual assignment as an instructor at the Army's premier marksmanship training facility had represented the completion of a remarkable journey from failure to excellence, providing her with opportunities to influence the development of future generations of military marksmen. Her teaching methods had been innovative and effective, combining traditional techniques with modern approaches to create training programs that maximize student potential while avoiding the problems that had characterized her own early experiences. The rifle that had served Maya throughout her career had been retired to a place of honor in her office, its service record including some of the most challenging and successful engagements in recent military history. The weapon had become a symbol of the importance of fundamentals over technology and persistence over momentary setbacks. Its legacy had been intertwined with Maya's own story of redemption and ultimate success. The memoir that Maya had been encouraged to write following her career achievements had become a best-selling account of military service and personal triumph, inspiring countless readers who faced their own challenges and setbacks. The book had emphasized themes of resilience, determination, and the importance of never accepting others' assessments of one's limitations. The literary success had provided another platform for sharing her message of hope and perseverance. Maya's legacy within the military had been established not just through her operational achievements, but also through her influence on training methods and evaluation procedures that would affect future generations of soldiers. Her story had become part of military folklore, used to illustrate the importance of fair assessment and the dangers of dismissing exceptional talent due to systemic failures. The institutional impact had been lasting and significant. The recognition that Maya had received from the highest levels of military leadership had included awards and commendations that acknowledged not only her tactical achievements, but also her contribution to improving military training and evaluation systems. The official recognition had been comprehensive and well-deserved, reflecting the extraordinary nature of her accomplishments and their broader significance for military effectiveness. Maya's continued service in special operations roles had been marked by consistent excellence and increasing responsibilities, with her expertise sought for the most challenging missions and her judgment trusted by commanders who understood the value of her experience and capabilities. The trajectory of her career had been remarkable, transforming failure into triumph through determination and exceptional performance. The ultimate vindication had been complete and satisfying. The years that followed Maya's transformation from rejected candidate to special operations legend had been filled with missions that tested every aspect of her capabilities and contributed to her growing reputation as one of the military's most effective precision shooters. Her assignment to Task Force Phoenix, an elite counter-terrorism unit operating in multiple theaters around the world, had provided opportunities to apply her skills in environments that ranged from urban combat zones to remote wilderness areas where conventional forces could not operate effectively. The psychological impact of Maya's vindication had been profound, not just for her personally, but for the entire military community that had witnessed her remarkable journey from failure to success. Her story had become a powerful reminder that individual assessments, no matter how official or seemingly authoritative, were fallible, and that true capability could only be measured through sustained performance under demanding conditions. The lesson had resonated throughout the Army's training establishment and had influenced policy changes that would prevent similar injustices in the future. Maya's approach to mission planning and execution had been shaped by her unique perspective as someone who had experienced both failure and exceptional success within the military system. She brought to each assignment a combination of technical expertise and hard-earned wisdom about the importance of preparation, equipment, reliability, and mental resilience that made her particularly effective in challenging operational environments. Her teammates had quickly learned to value her judgment and rely on her capabilities in situations where conventional approaches were inadequate. The technological evolution of military sniper systems during Maya's career had been remarkable, with advances in optics, ammunition, and ballistic computation that offered theoretical improvements in accuracy and effective range. However, Maya's experience had taught her that fundamental marksmanship skills remained more important than technological sophistication, and she had consistently demonstrated that properly applied basics could outperform the most advanced equipment in the hands of less capable operators. Her philosophy had influenced training programs and equipment procurement decisions throughout the special operations community. The international missions that Maya had participated in as part of Task Force Phoenix had provided exposure to diverse operational environments and tactical challenges that had further refined her capabilities and broadened her understanding of precision shooting applications. From the urban canyons of Middle Eastern cities to the high-altitude environments of Central Asian mountains, each deployment had presented unique problems that required innovative solutions and exceptional performance under pressure. The accumulated experience had made Maya one of the most versatile and effective operators in the special operations community. Maya's role as a mentor and instructor within Task Force Phoenix had been as important as her operational contributions, providing guidance and training to younger operators who were developing their own precision shooting capabilities. Her teaching methods had been influenced by both her father's patient instruction and her own hard-learned lessons about the importance of fundamentals, mental preparation, and equipment reliability. The soldiers she had trained had gone on to achieve their own successes in operational environments around the world. The documentation of Maya's operational achievements had created an official record of exceptional performance that stood in stark contrast to her early career setbacks and had provided objective evidence of capabilities that exceeded standard military measurements of sniper effectiveness. Her confirmed engagement distances had consistently pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible with standard military equipment, while her accuracy rates had approached theoretical perfection under conditions that would have challenged the most sophisticated weapon systems. The research projects that Maya had been invited to participate in following her operational successes had focused on understanding the factors that contributed to exceptional marksmanship performance and developing training methods that could help other soldiers achieve similar levels of capability. The studies had examined everything from physical conditioning and mental preparation to equipment optimization and environmental adaptation, creating a comprehensive body of knowledge that had influenced military training programs worldwide. Maya's consulting work with equipment manufacturers had provided opportunities to influence the development of new sniper systems and accessories, ensuring that the needs of operational users were considered during the design process. Her practical experience with various weapon systems and her understanding of the challenges faced by precision shooters in combat environments had made her input valuable to companies seeking to improve their products for military applications. The collaboration had resulted in several significant improvements to standard military equipment. The academic recognition that Maya had received for her contributions to military marksmanship theory and practice had included invitations to speak at professional conferences, and contribute to scholarly publications that were read by military professionals around the world. Her presentations had consistently emphasized the importance of individual skill development over technological dependence, challenging conventional wisdom about equipment requirements and training methodologies. The intellectual impact of her work had complemented her operational achievements. Maya's investigation into the systemic problems that had led to her initial failure at sniper school had revealed broader issues within military evaluation systems that affected not only marksmanship training, but other specialized programs as well. Her findings had contributed to comprehensive reforms that improved the fairness and accuracy of assessment procedures, while also ensuring that exceptional talent was recognized and properly developed, rather than dismissed due to administrative failures or equipment problems. The leadership positions that Maya had assumed within the special operations community had provided opportunities to influence policy and procedures at levels that affected thousands of military personnel. Her recommendations for improvements to training programs, equipment standards, and evaluation procedures had been implemented across multiple services and had contributed to measurable improvements in the effectiveness of military marksmanship training. The institutional impact of her work had been far-reaching and lasting. Maya's personal relationships within the military community had been strengthened by her professional achievements and her reputation for integrity and competence under pressure. The respect she had earned from colleagues and superiors had been based not just on her exceptional shooting ability, but also on her character and her commitment to helping others achieve their potential. The professional relationships had provided a network of support and collaboration that had enhanced her effectiveness throughout her career. The charitable work that Maya had undertaken in support of veterans and their families had provided an outlet for her desire to give back to the military community that had ultimately recognized and rewarded her capabilities. Her involvement with organizations that assisted wounded veterans and provided educational opportunities for military families had been personally meaningful and had allowed her to apply her leadership skills to challenges beyond purely military applications. The community service had been a natural extension of her commitment to service and excellence. Maya's exploration of civilian career opportunities had revealed that her military experience and specialized skills were highly valued in law enforcement, private security, and consulting industries that required precision shooting capabilities and tactical expertise. However, her commitment to military service and her satisfaction with her current assignments had led her to continue her Army career while maintaining connections with civilian organizations that might provide future opportunities. The public speaking engagements that Maya had accepted following her rise to prominence had provided platforms to share her story with audiences that extended far beyond the military community. Her presentations to corporate groups, educational institutions, and community organizations had emphasized themes of perseverance, continuous improvement, and the importance of not accepting others' limitations as permanent assessments of one's potential. The message had resonated with diverse audiences facing their own professional and personal challenges. Maya's media appearances and interviews had been carefully managed to protect operational security, while still allowing her to share the inspirational aspects of her story with broader audiences. The coverage had been generally positive and had helped to humanize the special operations community while also highlighting the important contributions made by military personnel who operated outside the public spotlight. The media attention had been professionally beneficial while also serving educational purposes. The advanced training courses that Maya had developed for special operations personnel had incorporated lessons learned from her own experience and research into the factors that contributed to exceptional marksmanship performance. The curriculum had been innovative and comprehensive, addressing not only technical skills but also mental preparation, equipment optimization, and tactical applications that were directly relevant to operational requirements. The training programs had been adopted by multiple military organizations and had contributed to measurable improvements in sniper effectiveness. Maya's collaboration with researchers and academics studying human performance under extreme conditions had provided insights into the psychological and physiological factors that enabled exceptional achievement in high-stress environments. The studies had examined everything from visual processing and motor control to stress management and decision-making under pressure, creating a scientific foundation for understanding and developing elite performance capabilities. The research had had applications beyond military context. The technological innovations that Maya had contributed to through her consulting and research work had included improvements to rifle systems, optical equipment, and ballistic computation methods that enhanced the capabilities available to military and law enforcement snipers. Her practical experience and understanding of operational requirements had helped ensure that new developments addressed real-world needs rather than theoretical possibilities that might not prove useful under actual conditions. Maya's involvement in international military exchanges and training programs had provided opportunities to share American expertise while also learning from the techniques and approaches used by Allied forces around the world. The cross-cultural exchanges had been professionally enriching and had contributed to improved cooperation and interoperability between military forces that operated together in various theaters. The international perspective had enhanced her understanding of diverse approaches to precision shooting and tactical operations. The awards and recognition that Maya had received from various military and civilian organizations had acknowledged both her operational achievements and her contributions to training and development programs that had benefited thousands of military personnel. The honors had included medals for valor and distinguished service, as well as civilian awards for contributions to public safety and national security. The recognition had been gratifying, but had never become the primary motivation for her continued service and dedication to excellence. Maya's mentorship of young soldiers and officers who were developing their own careers in special operations had been one of the most rewarding aspects of her later military service. Her guidance and support had helped numerous individuals overcome challenges and achieve success in demanding fields where failure rates were high and standards were uncompromising. The impact of her mentorship had multiplied her influence far beyond her individual operational contributions. The retirement planning that Maya had begun as her military career reached its natural conclusion had focused on opportunities to continue serving while transitioning to civilian roles that would utilize her experience and expertise. The options had included positions in law enforcement, private security, training and consulting, and academic roles that would allow her to continue influencing the development of future generations of precision shooters and tactical operators. Maya's reflection on her remarkable career journey had emphasized the importance of perseverance in the face of adversity and the value of maintaining confidence in one's abilities, even when faced with official assessments or institutional barriers that seemed insurmountable. Her experience had demonstrated that exceptional performance could overcome almost any obstacle, and that individual determination could triumph over systemic failures and prejudices. The lessons had been applicable far beyond military contexts. The legacy that Maya had built through her military service had extended far beyond her individual achievements to encompass the reforms and improvements that had resulted from her experiences and advocacy. The changes to training programs, evaluation procedures, and equipment standards that had been implemented as a result of her story had benefited countless military personnel and had contributed to improved effectiveness and fairness within military training systems. The institutional impact had been her most lasting contribution. Maya's influence on popular culture and public understanding of military service had been significant, though not always welcome, as her story had been used to illustrate various points about military effectiveness, gender integration, and the importance of fair evaluation procedures. The attention had sometimes been overwhelming, but had generally served positive purposes in educating civilian audiences about the realities of military service and the capabilities of modern military personnel. The documentary films and books that had featured Maya's story had provided detailed examinations of her career journey and its broader implications for military training and personnel development. The productions had been generally accurate and respectful, while also entertaining enough to reach audiences that might not otherwise be exposed to such military topics. The educational impact had been substantial and had contributed to improved civilian understanding of military operations and capabilities. Maya's consultation work with Hollywood productions and other entertainment industry projects had helped ensure that military themes were portrayed accurately and respectfully, while also providing opportunities to influence public perceptions of military service and capabilities. Her technical expertise and operational experience had been valuable in creating realistic portrayals that educated audiences while also entertaining them. The cultural influence had been an unexpected but welcome aspect of her post-military career. The foundation that Maya had established to support military families and veterans had focused on providing educational opportunities, career transition assistance, and support for family members affected by military service. The organization had grown steadily and had made meaningful contributions to addressing the challenges faced by military personnel and their families during and after their service. The philanthropic work had been personally fulfilling and had provided a vehicle for continued service to the military community. Maya's writing projects had included not only her memoir, but also technical publications, training manuals, and articles for professional journals that had shared her expertise with broader audiences. The written work had been well received and had contributed to the professional literature on marksmanship, tactical operations, and military training. The intellectual contributions had complemented her practical achievements and had ensured that her knowledge and experience would continue to benefit others. The corporate board positions that Maya had accepted following her military retirement had provided opportunities to apply her leadership experience and strategic thinking to civilian business challenges, while also ensuring that her military perspective was represented in discussions about products and services that served military and law enforcement markets. The business involvement had been professionally rewarding and had provided new challenges that utilized her skills in different contexts. Maya's grandchildren had been among her most appreciative audiences, as she had shared stories of her military service and the lessons she had learned throughout her remarkable career. The family storytelling had provided opportunities to pass on values of perseverance, integrity, and service, while also entertaining young listeners with tales of adventure and achievement. The family legacy had been as important to Maya as her professional accomplishments. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.